Guardian, is a priest novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 9. Sundial of Reincarnation Part 8. Zhao Yunlan leaned backwards and crossed his legs. Why are you so agitated? If you didn't know the victim, and her death had nothing to do with you, why are you so frightened? Why did you take the longer route to the east side? What did you see? Li Qian suddenly screeched, falling to the ground, trying to cover her face with her hair. Zhao Yunlan grabbed her wrist, continuing to question her. You can't run away from it. Tell me, what did you see? Li Qian struggled out of his grasp and began to shake uncontrollably. I don't know, she screamed, her voice nearly breaking from its force. I don't know. Don't ask me anything. I don't know anything. Your campus isn't very big, Zhao Yunlan continued, lowering his voice. You must have seen her or met her somewhere, perhaps in a study room, the library, or the cafeteria. Do you want to know how she died? When she was found, her body was lying all alone in the small alley, her stomach slashed open and emptied. There were teeth markings on some remaining guts, so the murderer could have eaten her internal organs. Blood, everywhere. The stains are yet to be cleaned up, and you know what? Li Qian squeaked in terror, shuddering in response to the gruesome descriptions. When her stomach was slashed open, she was still alive, her guts and intestines were being eaten, one by one, while she was still conscious, Zhao Yunlan heartlessly continued. Can you imagine? She would have heard the crunching and munching of her own organs. Li Qian curled up into a ball, burying her head between her knees. A doctor, in response to her earlier screaming, rushed inside, shouting in distress. What's wrong? Zhao Yunlan showed him his staff card and closed the door, saying, Excuse me, this is a police investigation. Please give me 5 more minutes. Zhao Yunlan crossed his arms, turned around, and repeated, Tell me what you saw. A shadow. Zhao Yunlan's expression grew somber and he dashed forward, kneeling beside Li Qian. What kind of shadow? Watch out for the shards, Shen Wei reminded them, grabbing a broom to clean up the shattered glass. Should I see myself out? Li Qian, do you want some water? No, Zhao Yunlan waved his hand in refusal. It's good that you're here. I didn't bring a female colleague along, so it wouldn't be appropriate if it's just the two of us in here. He helped Li Qian up, handing her a pack of tissues, repeated his earlier question. What kind of shadow? Please tell me. When I passed by her and saw her wearing the t-shirt, I greeted her even though we didn't know each other. But she told me to back off, and hurried away. Then, Li Qian's red eyes widened and she shivered. Then I looked down, and I saw, she had 2 shadows. Multiple light sources can create multiple shadows, perhaps, Shen Wei softly explained. No, not like that. Li Qian trembled as she recalled what she'd seen. The shadow appeared where there was no light, and it was much darker than normal. And it was moving all on its own. The room was eerily silent. Li Qian had been trembling and quivering for so long, it seemed that her bones were about to shatter. Shen Wei leaned forward, softly murmuring, Calm down. I saw it, Professor Shen, I really saw it. Li Qian grabbed his shirt, tears starting to leak out of her swollen eyes. I saw it follow the girl, and when she entered the narrow alley, the shadow stood up like an actual person. I ran and I ran. I thought I was dreaming, I thought it was just an illusion, you know? But you just had to tell me that she's. She pushed Shen Wei away, sprinted to the nearest corner and vomited. Shen Wei glared at Zhao Yunlan with disapproval. Zhao Yunlan rubbed his nose, commenting, don't worry, her reaction could have been worse. You didn't see it, but earlier this morning one of the policemen at the crime scene vomited even more. Shen Wei helplessly looked at Zhao Yunlan and shook his head. Turning away, he asked the doctor at the door for some water and helped Li Qian up. Li Qian shakily stood, legs resembling boiled noodles, and stumbled to the bed, staring at Zhao Yunlan with a helpless gaze. It killed her and now it's coming after me. I saw it, so it wouldn't let me go, would it? Zhao Yunlan didn't respond and took a small notebook out of his pocket. What did it look like? I'm not too sure, but it looked like a person, about this tall. She motioned with her hand. It was all black, a little short, and a little fat. Short and fat. Zhao Yunlan echoed her, his face twisting into a frown. Li Qian nodded. Could it be that it wasn't short, but you ran away before it stood up? Li Qian paused for a moment, then dropped her head. Maybe. Zhao Yunlan paused and looked at her strangely before resuming his writing. And then, he prompted. Then I ran away. Zhao Yunlan silently scrutinized the girl. Li Qian clenched her fists under his gaze, fingers turning white. After a moment, Zhao Yunlan tore off a piece of paper and wrote down a string of numbers. If there is anything else, please call me, my phone is on 24/7. Thank you for your time, he said. Stuffing the paper into Li Qian's hand, he stood up. I will walk you out, Shen Wei offered. Oh, there's no need, Zhao Yunlan replied. I'm going out for a smoke. You stay behind to chat with her a bit. Sorry if I scared her. Zhao Yunlan left. Are you hungry? I can buy you a meal from the cafeteria, Shen Wei gently asked the scared girl. Li Qian nodded feebly, slightly relieved that Zhao Yunlan was gone. Shen Wei then asked, I will call the doctor in to look after you. You have a good rest here before you head back, okay? Li Qian nodded again. Shen Wei reached the door, before worriedly turning around. Do you have enough cash? I could give you some. Li Qian smiled lightly. Thank you, Professor, but I don't need it. Shen Wei sighed and subtly reminded her, some lies are intentional, some are not. The former is to deceive others, the latter is to deceive yourself, but both are pitiable regardless of the situation. Li Qian froze. Shen Wei looked down before letting out a sigh. Never mind, take care of yourself. He picked up a bottle of medicine from the pharmacy and rushed out. Zhao Yunlan was still in the corridor, on the phone. I checked, this time it's not our problem. It's a problem from the other side, the female voice on the phone, unlike Wang Zhang's, contained hints of mischief. Last night the gates of hell opened and several ghosts went missing, but most of them were new ghosts less than a week old. The problem is, I heard a hungry ghost got away in the mix. Zhao Yunlan thought he heard her wrong. What? He questioned in surprise. Hungry ghost. Zhao Yunlan was furious, but managed to lower his voice. What the fuck is going on? Which motherfucking hell guard wants to get fired? The prisons aren't perfect. Besides, the other side is still using the same management from over a century ago. Hungry ghosts are the most desperate and the prison guards are pretty useless. I could probably break out of that prison 8 times a day. She paused for a moment. Oh right, since someone died, that person will be sending a letter and perhaps may even visit us in person. Come back quickly, I don't dare to open that letter. Zhao Yunlan frowned. Right, got it, I'm coming. Help me take care of something in the meantime. Since the small alley faces the university's main road, there should be CCTVs around. Help me dig up the footage. Then check on Li Qian, a first-year postgraduate in Dragon City University, studying foreign languages. Also, I want you to help me ask the other side whether they've heard of an ancient sundial with a will of reincarnation on it. Zhao Yunlan glanced to the side and saw Shen Wei rush out of the room. That's all. I've got to go. Call me if you find anything. He hung up and turned around, quickly putting on a polite and friendly face. Wait a moment, Professor Shen. You're too kind. End of the chapter. Chapter 10. Sundial of Reincarnation Part 9. Professor Shen handed Zhao Yunlan a bottle of medicine. You forgot your medicine. Frowning, he glanced at the wound on Zhao Yunlan's elbow. Take care of it. Keep the wound dry and don't eat irritating foods. Zhao Yunlan silently gazed back at him. What? Shen Wei asked, slightly uncomfortable. Are you married, Professor Shen? Zhao Yunlan suddenly asked. Startled, Shen Wei slowly replied, no. Oh. Zhao Yunlan continued, do you have a girlfriend? Zhao Yunlan's masculine gaze covered the other's body, making Shen Wei shiver. Shen Wei felt that regardless of his answer, he was in trouble. Zhao Yunlan took the medicine bottle from Shen Wei and half-jokingly said, Professor Shen is so young and handsome, and so caring, you must be a catch. Nonsense, Shen Wei was rather tense. Zhao Yunlan smiled, dimples appearing. Right, can I borrow your phone for a second? Shen Wei took out his phone but Zhao Yunlan didn't take it. Instead, he took Shen Wei's hand, entered his phone number and name into the contacts list, called himself, and hung up. You can call me, Zhao Yunlan smoothly stated, putting on a professional face. If there's anything about the case, that is. He tossed the bottle into the air, caught it, then waved at Shen Wei. Thank you very much. I have something to take care of now, but after I finish this case, I will treat you to a meal. With one hand in his pocket, he lazily sauntered away, movements slightly sloppy and laid back, yet still giving off a charismatic vibe. He was like a peacock performing a mating dance with its beautiful plumage, releasing hormones with his seductive movements. As the man walked away, Shen Wei relaxed a little, looking at Zhao Yunlan with a deep, yet restrained gaze. After a final look, he turned around. However, just a few steps later, Shen Wei couldn't help but look back again, only to see an empty hallway, the other long gone. In his contacts list glowed a new entry, an amorous Alan. He muttered the name and felt as though a knife had pierced through the softest part of his heart, slowly tearing it apart. Shen Wei raised his fingers and smelled the hint of cologne still clinging to them. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and tried to calm the beating of his heart. He didn't know what kind of cologne Zhao Yunlan used, but the smell lingered in his mind. Familiar, as though he'd dreamed of it for years. A few leaves fell to the ground, the soft rustling the only source of sound in the surroundings. Shen Wei stood silently, going over the recent events in his mind. After a long while, he smiled self-mockingly and hurriedly left. He looked down, his sorrow wearing away, his face turning stern, a touch of malice entering his eyes. After Guo Changcheng was given a background investigation mission, he struggled to figure out what kind of background he had to investigate. All he managed to do was speak with some people inarticulately. Zhao Yunlan finally called him at noon. Guo Changcheng dispiritedly returned with the strange, talking cat, and waited for the chief to pick him up at the entrance. Guo Changcheng curled up in a ball on the ground, a black lump of fur sitting beside him, attracting the attention of several passers-by. Half an hour later, Zhao Yunlan hurriedly arrived. After kneeling on the floor for so long, Guo Changcheng's legs trembled as he stumbled along behind Chief Zhao. While waiting, Guo Changcheng had thoroughly reconsidered the series of events he'd gone through during his first 12 hours of working for the Su. How could he have passed out more than once? Guo Changcheng had never thought he would qualify for the high-salaried Su, but now that he had gotten in there because of his connections, he ought to at least work hard to stay in there. Otherwise, what would his uncle think? Troubled, Guo Changcheng glanced at Chief Zhao, who was carrying Diqing on his shoulder. Although the cat was incredibly fat and made the chief rather uncomfortable, he still appeared handsome and cool. Chief Zhao wasn't much older than Guo Changcheng. How was there such a huge difference? Zhao Yunlan turned around and Guo Changcheng quickly averted his gaze. What? You have something to say? Guo Changcheng dropped his head in response, trying to hide his face under his black fringe. Don't be shy, Zhao Yunlan kindly coaxed. If you want to say something, just say it. I'm not bad-tempered and I never get mad for longer than a day. Diqing quietly listened. Even after a few thousand years of cat life, it still couldn't understand human hypocrisy. Guo Changcheng stuttered for a long while, before on the verge of tears, saying, I think I'm so useless. Haha, did anyone say you aren't? Zhao Yunlan thought. Zhao Yunlan patted him gently on the head. It's all right, little kid, it's your first time after all. Nobody is perfect, am I right? You'll get there slowly. So tell me, what did you hear from the teachers? Oh. Guo Changcheng hurriedly took out a notebook. The victim is called, she is called Lu Ruime. She's a mathematics postgraduate student, a local, and her family is quite well off. The faculty of mathematics doesn't have a lot of girls, so she was rather popular. I didn't hear anything about her getting into trouble or having enemies. She was applying for a research opportunity, but she spent a lot of time on extracurricular activities, so her grades were dropping. What else? What do you think? Zhao Yunlan was surprisingly patient. I think some of the other students competing for a research opportunity might have a motive. We could investigate her relationships with other students. Guo Changcheng unconfidently glanced at Zhao Yunlan. That's all I can think of. Oh. Zhao Yunlan slowly nodded and continued, so how do you think she died? She was murdered. Gao Changcheng replied, feeling stupid for not being able to come up with another reason. Zhao Yunlan laughed helplessly. Guo Changcheng, oblivious to subtle emotions and expressions, laughed along. Controlling his anger, Chief Zhao put on a professional face. You've done well. You have good potential. Guo Changcheng looked up at the chief, who wore a gentle and friendly smile. He's so good looking, Guo Changcheng thought, the man's words helping his fear abate. Guo Changcheng's face turned red in gratitude, the chief really was too good to him. He suddenly felt like Chief Zhao was someone worth dying for. Guo Changcheng gathered up his courage and volunteered to take up the most difficult job, one involving talking to strangers. Then I will go investigate her relationships at school. What's the hurry? Zhu Hong is still at the office, I will give her a call and she can take care of that, Zhao Yunlan carelessly said. How about this? I will give you another important mission instead. Do you remember the girl who almost jumped off the building? She is a key witness in this case. I want you to follow her. I think she lied to me, so go and figure out what she's up to. Guo Chang straightened his posture, eyes sparkling. Yes, sir. Zhao Yunlan nodded. Right. Go. Guo Chang rushed away, more eager and enthusiastic than he'd ever been. After a while, the benevolent chief returned to his true self. Fuck me, he said to the cat on his shoulder. I have never seen such a pure idiot like this one. So motherfucking impressive. Diching sighed. You're really mean and hypocritical, chief. You're a cat, don't give me that crap. You're the hypocritical one. Go follow him. Don't let him die, otherwise what will I say to his uncle? He patted the cat on the butt. Diching lazily meowed, bounced off of Zhao Yunlan, and rolled out like a ball, chased after the boy. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.